It is after 11 o'clock Central Time. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jackie Bodie. I'm with the AAO Foundation. Thank you for taking some time today to join us for this webinar regarding our park application process. We're happy to have everyone with us today. This will be recorded, as you just heard. So after this is completed, we will have the recording available on our website for you to reference at any point as needed. And then if we can do a couple of housekeeping types of things. First thing, if you don't mind, if you haven't already, changing or looking at your name on your little window here on Zoom and creating something that will tell us your name as well as the institution that you're with, just so we have some additional information as to who is joining us today. That would be wonderful. If you haven't done that before, that's with the three little dots in the top right hand corner of your box on Zoom. So if everyone would do that for us, I would appreciate it. And then the last comment I have to make is the fact that we will have several times throughout the presentation to ask and stop for questions. So to keep that moving quickly, if you do have a question, please feel free to post it in the chat at any point, and we will keep an eye on that. And then when we take those breaks, we'll ask those questions. So definitely utilize the chat for any of that information as well, and we'll get your questions answered today as much as possible. And lastly, I just want to thank our members of PARC that are here today to present to you. Our presenters are Dr. Huja, Dr. Alaretti, Dr. Fraser Bowers, and Dr. Claro, and they are all PARC members. And so you'll get to hear from our experts today in regards to the process and any new information you might need to be prepared for this year. So thank you again for joining us, and please post any questions in the chat as they come up. Thank you.
Okay, Jackie, do you want me to go ahead and get started, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, good morning to everyone. I'm Sarandeep Huja, and I serve as a member of PARC. Really delighted to have you here today. And Mindy, am I going to ask you to advance the slides, as I assume that I'm not going to be able to do that? I just want to acknowledge all the AAOF staff that are here today, who have really helped greatly in putting this workshop and this presentation together. And I also want to thank my fellow PARC members who are listed on this slide. So Mindy, if you could go to the next slide. So this is really the outline of what we are going to spend some time in talking about. And we're going to talk about what our goals are, the mission, and the award types and eligibility. I'm going to try to do that. And then my colleagues from PARC, other PARC members, will be going through the other components. But really the goal of our workshop is to educate you as much as we can on how to be successful in receiving an AAOF award, and what are the different types of awards and which category should you be applying in. So I hope towards the end of the day today, you would have answers to those questions. And feel free to ask questions, raise your hands electronically, and we will have, as Jackie mentioned, we'll have adequate amount of time to stop for questions, and we have breaks between the various speakers. So we'll take a pause, and then we'll have questions right at the end. So really, as I was mentioning, the goal really is to define these award categories, and some of them are more like, alphabet soup. They have maybe strange acronyms, but we will try to demystify that for you today. And then we'll talk a little bit about, how are these grants reviewed? What is the criteria for these various grants, and how funding decisions are made? So I believe you'll get a lot of information by the end of this workshop on how PARC works and how you can be successful. So this workshop is relatively new. I think we started this during COVID to do it online. Prior to that, at the AAO meeting, we used to have a workshop where people would attend virtually, but in person. But we found that the virtual attendance was so good that we felt that this would reach out to a broader group of individuals. And then there's an opportunity for this workshop to be recorded. So if people missed it, or who were not at the AAO meeting, or who wanted to review the workshop a little bit later on their own pace, that they were able to do that. So our goal is also to improve the quality and completeness of the application. So all through this workshop, we're going to tell you what are the needs of the various awards and what would be considered a complete application. We want to increase your chances of success. And we want to talk to you a little bit about, I think at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the fundraising efforts of the AAOF and what the AAOF has done. It's also on subsequent slides out here. So Mandy, and you can read the mission statement by itself, but just to share with you that the AAOF, which is the American Association of Orthodontists Foundation, has funded an amazing number, 500 fellowships and research awards since 1994. So you can see that over less than 30 years, it has invested 15.6 million into orthodontic faculty primarily. And another amazing statistic is that 76% of the faculty who have been supported by the AAOF remain in full-time academics for after 5 years of receiving the awards. And I would add that a number of people who are PARC members out here have received AAOF awards in the past, and they've been in academics for a very long time. I would say a number of the program directors and chairs of orthodontic programs have benefited from the AAOF funding. So the impact is really widespread of the AAOF funding. Last year, we received 46 proposals and 29 were proof of funding. So, we receive all these proposals, we give them due consideration. We'll talk over the process of how we review these awards, but I would share with you that the reviewers, which is the 9 members of PARC, which is the Planning and Awards Review Committee of the AAOF, spend a considerable amount of time before they meet in January to review these grants. And after decisions are made in providing really a critique of the proposal, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's critique is the correct word, but really something to support you and to tell you what you did right and to share with you what you can do better if you did not receive an award. And if you did receive an award, there may be some suggestions of what you may wish to consider in your research application. So it's really a process of growing careers for junior orthodontic faculty and to support research in the orthodontic area so that our specialty can be better as we move forward. So next slide. I think that each year we have a call for proposals, and this year the call for proposals is on the business of orthodontic practice. This has been a theme from the past, and it's also studies impending issues in orthodontic practice. So if you have a proposal that is in this category of orthodontic practice, you can identify that this is a specific proposal that you're responding to from the AAOF, and that will be given consideration. So let's talk about all these acronyms and abbreviations out here. We have various types of awards, and I'm just going to give a kind of an overview, and then my fellow PARC members are going to go into the detail of each of these awards. So the first award is called an OFDFA. It is a Career Development Award. It's an orthodontic faculty development award. You can apply for up to $30,000, and it can be for your career development. So you want to develop your academic career, you want to attend some workshops on how to teach, or you want to grow your clinical skills, or you want to do a research project. The important thing is that there is a cap of $20,000 to the salary. So you can ask for salary on this OFDFA. And we'll talk a little bit more about the details subsequently. But just to think about it is that the OFDFA is typically meant for a faculty, a junior faculty, as you will see on the next few slides, and it has a salary cap of $20,000. The next award is the Biomedical Research Award, and it has a maximum of $40,000. And what I want to share with you is that these amounts have gone up recently in the last couple of years, which is a good thing. And you don't have to apply for the full amount. You can apply for the full amount, but you don't have to apply for a full amount. And then we have a Research Aid Award, which is up to $6,000. And this is typically for residents and part-time faculty, as you'll see on the subsequent slides. And then we have Center Awards, which are $25,000 for a maximum of 3 years. So it can be up to $75,000. And then you have a fellowship award, postdoctoral fellowship award, which is a maximum of $50,000 for 2 years. And this is limited to one proposal per program. So if you are at a particular university, on that department would only submit one proposal per year in this category. In the other categories, there are no such limitations as far as I can recall, but more details to come. So there is an application deadline of October 13th of this year. This allows the applications to be received electronically, and then they're reviewed for conflicts of interest. They're provided to the park members. The park members then review them, they score them, which you will hear more about, and then they actually meet in January and they discuss the applications and make recommendations to the board of the AAOF for funding, because they're the ones who eventually decide at what level these grants will be funded, because they also have a budget that they have to be within. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the award types and eligibility criteria. And I think, Seth, I believe you're going to be doing the next component, which is talking about those 11 components. So all of these award categories are for US and Canadian institutions and really are there to support and ensure a commitment to an academic career. We know that when you join as a junior faculty, there are, you're thrown into the clinic, you get really busy, but you're looking to develop your career. And this is an excellent support mechanism. And I would say that there are few specialty organizations, maybe like endodontics and pediatric dentistry, that do this extremely well. But I'm very proud to say that the AAOF does an amazing job, as you saw from the data that I shared with you earlier, in supporting individuals who are interested in academic careers. This is open to US and Canadian citizens and green card holders. And, I think there'll be some conversation, and if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions towards the end of who can apply, but it's primarily meant for US and Canadian citizens and green card holders. And we'll talk about these awards are a mixture for full-time faculty, part-time faculty, and residents. And we will discuss a little bit more about this in the different award categories. So next slide, Andy. So one of the things that happened, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, is that we went to an electronic system, and these grants are now submitted electronically online on a portal. Previously, the grants used to be submitted on paper, and you had to provide 2 copies and a copy of your grant on a memory stick. We don't do that anymore. Everything is online. And this has worked out to be a good system because you can be working on your grant pretty much until the last minute. And it also facilitates that your grant is structured in a particular way because there are certain things that you have to fields that you have to fill, and it ensures that you fill all those fields. So it helps in templating the grant application. So you can go to the link out here, and then there'll be an apply page, and you can spend your time. You can start this, I assume, right now in June, and prior to the deadline of October 13th of this year, you can keep on filling various criteria, adding biosketches, things that you will hear about. And then you have to hit the submit button by October 13th, and maybe earlier if you're a little bit, that's always good to not to leave it to the last minute. And you'll get done with your application in early October. But once you submit it, you cannot change the application. So once you hit the submit button, but obviously prior to that, you can change things, edit things, review things. And if you have questions about the website specifically, please reach out to the AOF staff. They will be very happy to help you. So, and Mindy, you can tell me, I don't see the slide number out here, but I still think I'm doing this part, and then we'll transition at the questions. So one of the grant award types is the Orthodontic Faculty Development Fellowship. It's also known as the OFDFA. I mentioned that is $30,000 for 1 year. It's typically for full-time faculty who are in the first 5 years of their appointment in the US. So if you were an orthodontist in, let's say in Brazil, and then you came and received an appointment in the US, your clock starts up there. It doesn't start from, earlier on. And then the other award is the Postdoctoral Fellowship Award. These awards are typically for orthodontists with a PhD or equivalent, and this is for faculty who are really focused on doing research. There is a very high level of commitment, time commitment for these postdoctoral fellowship awards. So the person is spending most of their time doing research, and they could receive funding of $100,000 over a 2-year period with a 3rd year possibility. This individual would typically be doing a postdoc training in a certain lab or in a certain area, and they would demonstrate that they have a high potential for receiving extramural funding. So many of our awardees who have received this postdoctoral fellowship award have gone on then to receive NIH grants like an R03 or an R01. Only one proposal per orthodontic program will be considered because this is a large amount of money. It's difficult to open it up for more than one proposal per program. So just to summarize, the OFDFA is for junior faculty. It's a career development award. It is really very flexible. And you can propose a research proposal. You can talk about, I want to improve my clinical skills, my educational skills, and I want to grow as a junior faculty. So it is probably the most flexible one, while the postdoctoral fellowship award is more specific in what the needs are, and those will be detailed subsequently. So next slide. So I think there's a question being asked, is there a limit to the number of these awards that one person can receive? My understanding is that Jackie, you can correct me, but I know that people have received OFDFAs repeatedly, more than once. So I think do you know the answer to that question?
Dr. Hoosh, I think it's up to 3 awards.
Up to 3 awards. Okay. So thanks, Seth. So then there's the Biomedical Research Award. Laura, does that answer your question? Is that consistent with what you know? Okay. So the biomedical research awards, again, 40,000 for full-time faculty, typically greater than 3 years. It can be at any rank. So previously it was only for certain ranks, but it's been opened up to all ranks. And you can have multiple applications for every orthodontic program. So there may be, multiple applications from a program. And, every year we try to improve the process for the AAOF. And this year, I think would be this or the last year was the first time that we made it. Now, people who are in a cleft or a craniofacial program are now eligible to apply for a biomedical research award. They need to have a teaching commitment, and they typically are from an accredited team. So there'll be more details of this in the application, but the good thing is that it's been broadened to craniofacial teams because they typically aren't within a university. They could be within a hospital setting. Another award is the Research Aid Award. This is typically meant for residents who are interested in starting a career in academics following their residency. And their letter of support should state their academic interest. And they may either become a part-time faculty or a full-time faculty soon after graduation. And to answer the same question that I received, this is, you only get one shot at this RAA if you're a resident, because we think as a resident, you will only be doing one research proposal. And you have to submit it at least because of the duration of the programs. Orthodontic residencies are different, 24 months versus 36 months or 32 months. You have to be able to submit it and you need to have at least 1 year after the funding to be able to complete the project. This award is also open to part-time faculty, and they can apply for this award and they can apply repeatedly for this award. Unlike the residents, the part-time faculty would be able to apply for this award repeatedly. And if I'm incorrect in any of this information, please correct me. Going to the next slide is the Center Award. And we will answer questions about green card status too. The next is the Center Award. There is no seniority limit, so all ranks is open to all ranks. And really the goal of these awards is to enhance collaborations within an institution and between institutions. So it's not meant to, so for example, if you're at a university and you want to collaborate with the engineering school, or you want to collaborate with the physiology department in the College of Medicine, if you can submit a proposal that will show that you will do better by collaborating with other organizations and institutions, or the collaboration could be between institutions. So for example, multiple orthodontic programs between different institutions would be another example. And there are 4 types of center awards. We will go into the details subsequently, but just to give you an overview. So next slide. So this is just like a decision tree, just to summarize some of the information. And again, you're going to get a little bit more information. You may still be confused about these different awards, but please don't worry. We will clarify and give you more information about each of these awards. So this decision tree says that, I am or I will be an orthodontic faculty. And if you're full-time, we would encourage you in your early years to apply for an OFDFA award, which is an early career development award with a lot of flexibility on the various options that exist. If you're more research focused and you probably have a PhD or an equivalent, and you have a lot of committed time from your institutions to focus on your research. So if you're research intensive, then you could potentially apply for a postdoctoral fellowship award. If you're a full-time faculty with more than 3 years of experience, and this is just a recommendation, and if you have a investigator-initiated project in mind, let's say you want to, follow up on a developer research area, whether it be digital workflows or bone biology or anything else. It could be, various types of reviews that you're doing. You can apply for a biomedical research award. It's open to everyone. So people who have previously received a PFA or an OFDFA gradually then tend to apply after that initial periods for biomedical research awards. And you can do this even if you've been a faculty for 20 years or 25 years or 30 years. It is really the merit of your proposal, not so much of where you are in your career development, that will be to your benefit when you apply for these biomedical research awards. I talk to you as if you're a full-time faculty, you can apply for these center awards, which emphasizes collaborations. And really the essence is that, we know that we may have certain resources at our institution, but if we combine with other institutions or other groups, whether we can propose a project that is more collaborative and will be able to answer questions that are more diverse. And then if your decision tree is, if you're a part-time faculty or an orthodontic resident, or you're going to be becoming an orthodontic resident. So let me specify that, so if you intend to go into a faculty position, either part-time or full-time after your residency, or if you're a part-time faculty, then you can apply for the Research Aid Award, which is for $6,000. So I think this is my last slide, and I will, Mindy, if you can go to the next slide, I believe you can see that this is an opportunity to ask questions. And I can try to see if I can go to the chat box and answer questions.
The only question that I saw, Dr. Hujo, was it regarding the green card question. And I think, Cheryl, you can tell me if I'm incorrect, but I feel like what we're looking for is that they're working towards the green card and documentation that talks about that. So as long as I think we get that type of information, we would be okay with the process.
That's correct. Yes, they just have to be applying for it, and then the institution has to back them up, stating that, they are getting it.
Yeah. So if I may add, Jackie, there's a lot of differences between saying, hey, I'm applying for a green card, or actually having documentation that you've actually applied for a green card. So probably the best documentation is from, if you're doing your green card through your university, your legal counsel or whoever, your global affairs that is processing your green card makes or the attorney that you have hired makes a statement that this person has submitted their application or has started their application towards a green card. So, previously I would say that individuals had to have a green card. I think the AAOF is always trying to see how to help people, and they know that junior faculty are not going to have a green card the day they get a faculty appointment, right? That's going to take some time. So that's why the change was made, is that if you have submitted your paperwork or you're in the process of applying for your green card, understanding that it might take some time, you are still eligible for these awards. Now, for the RAA, for the Research Aid Award for a resident, there is no green card requirement. There is no US residency requirement or citizenship requirement. But for all the other proposals, you have to show, because these grants are meant to support people from North America, from US and Canadian institutions. So you have to show that you are heading in that direction, that you're going to be domiciled within the United States or Canada, or you're already a citizen of the United States or Canada. Does that answer the question that popped up out there?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's another question. Must RA applications apply directly to one of the two areas specified in the call for proposal? Absolutely not. Very good questions. Thank you. The RAA, for the residents, it most likely is going to be your thesis project. So the call for proposals is just a specific area that the AOF board feels that they're asking for proposals, and it'll be identified for them so that, if they think that this is an area of emphasis for them, area that they're looking for information, they may fund those proposals a little bit more differently than the investigator initiated proposals. So I hope, Jackson, that has answered your question. So it could be in any area. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Huja, I think I'm going to take over from you.
Yeah,
for this.
And I think there's another question. Let's just,
Okay.
yeah, and then, and if we don't answer, Dr. Alareddy will go ahead and get started after this question. And if there are any more questions, we'll continue to come back to them and answer them towards the end. Yes, so to answer Corinne's question, I'm not sure. You have to have an affiliation with the orthodontic department, is my understanding. So let's say if you are in the Department of Biomaterials or in some other department, you have to have an affiliation with the orthodontic department to apply for AOF funding. There is no problem with you holding a PhD and an orthodontic title from an other country, and you could be doing orthodontic research, but you do have to belong to an orthodontic department. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie.
I think we are on track. So we ready to move forward with Dr. Alareddy's section?
Yes, Jackie, did you answer that question?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
We are on track. So, and your answer was correct.
Okay. Okay, Seth.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Hujam. And then I'll go over some tips or give you some helpful suggestions for completing your publications. So first is if you have received a previous AAOF award, we would really like to look at the kind of outcome metrics that you were able to deliver with your previous awards. And this also gives an opportunity to reflect on your academic accomplishments, success in career development and scholarship, and the future chances of success with additional funding. So you have a section for, can you go back, please? I'm not done yet. Yeah, thanks, Mandy. So what we would really want to look at is your specific outcomes associated with the award that you got. And this includes metrics such as publications in peer-reviewed journals, presentations, and any follow-up grants or awards. And to add to what Dr. Huja provided about some of the outcomes that the AAOF program was successfully able to achieve over the past few years, just a few metrics. We had over 100 published peer-reviewed articles stemming from the projects done with support or funding from the AAOF. Out of the 102 department chairs and program directors, this includes 66 department chairs and 36 program directors in the country. 31 of them were supported in the earlier, in their early part of their academic career by AAOF. And then 19 NIH funded projects also resulted with support from AAOF. Again, these are all very important outcome measures for AAOF and also its donors. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So one of the components that the PARC committee looks at is your budget and budget justification. Provide as much granular detail as possible about the budget and why you would want to have support for that particular line item. Provide a good justification and follow the guidelines, especially with regards to what is allowed for salaries and limits. For example, if you are applying for an OF TFA or a PFA award, you could budget for salary support or salary supplement. But if you're going to apply for a biomedical research award or a research aid award, then you really cannot budget for salaries. And there are limits to how much you can budget for travel. And then we only support travel for you to go to a meeting to present findings, or if it is related directly to the AAOF award for which you got funding. And the limit is at about $2,000 for all the awards, with the exception of the Research Aid Award, for which the limit is about $1,000. And provide very clear details about if you do not have sufficient funding, because there are caps on how much a particular award group will fund your project. For example, a biomedical research award provides support for up to $40,000. And if your project is going over $40,000, then you would want to provide information on what line items the AAOF award is funding, and then where are you going to get the support for the rest of the money for you to complete the project. So you have like 2 pages that you can use to provide a detailed budget and budget justification. Can we go to the next slide? So as I said earlier, the fellowships, specifically the OFTFA and the PFA awards, do provide a stipend or a salary support or a supplement. Now, just check with your schools about if they would allow a salary supplement. So you could use the monies to support your salary or to supplement your salary. Now, salary supplement is different from a salary support. So salary supplement is something that you could take over your salary that the university or your department is giving you, but not all universities allow a salary supplement. For example, at University of Illinois, Chicago, where I serve as a faculty, I can take a salary support, but I cannot take a salary supplement. So please talk with your Office of Sponsored Research and your department, and make sure that you are able to take a salary supplement, and if not, take a salary support. So what the reviewers assess with regards to budget and budget justification, again, it has to be appropriate for the proposed activities, your line items. It has to be complete, and it has to be reasonable too. And if it is not in the budget, make sure that you're able to clearly articulate in your budget justification document how you're going to get support for you to successfully complete the project. And then you're actually helping out the reviewers by providing as much information as you can so that we are able to evaluate your proposal appropriately. So next is the biosketches. So every application will require biosketches from individuals who are named on the title pages. So these are the principal investigators, co-investigators, and also the consultants. We recommend using a NIH format biosketch. It should be less than 4 pages, up to 4 pages. Have a personal statement that provides a very brief overview of you and your activities and what you hope to accomplish through this project. Any positions and honors that you have, and your contributions to science, which is pretty much the publications in peer-reviewed journals in your areas of research. And then you also provide information on your previous or ongoing research support. And for those projects which are completed in the last 3 years, please do list them. Then coming to the role of applicants. On your title page, you're going to specify who your who's going to be in the study team, clearly define what their roles and responsibilities are, and how much percentage effort they are putting on the project. Again, this is the percentage effort of your mentor or your co-investigator or your consultant. And then for fellowship awards, for example, the OFTFA, the role of a mentor is very critical. Clearly articulate what your mentor is going to do to guide you through this project. And this has to be somebody that is well accomplished in this particular area of research and endeavor that you are undertaking. You want to make a compelling case of your mentor having the skills and the background to actually support you in this project. So for the proposed plan, you would want to have like an abstract, which is about like 1 page, less than 1 page. And then like, please pay very close attention to the page requirements. You do not want to go over the page limit. So the abstract should be about 1 page, provide a very high level overview of the study objectives and the specific aims and how you want to, what you want to accomplish in this project. And there are different page limits for different awards. And if this is going to be a resubmission, like if you are applied and you were not awarded the award, then you have like 1 page to demonstrate what you have changed or what additions or changes you made in your previous application that you could use to basically justify a resubmission. And then have a timetable, which is again should be less than 1 page, up to 1 page rather. And then for references, there is no page limit, and include all cited materials. Okay, there is a question about salary support. Probably I'll go over that after I go present my slides. As I said earlier, resubmissions are highly encouraged. Make the appropriate and major changes to the resubmitted application, and clearly sort of demonstrate what changes you made based on the comments that you got in your previous review, and then try to address all the comments or the recommended changes. And usually we have a very high success rate for resubmissions. Okay, I think we can skip to the next slide. Yeah. With regards to letters of support, there are no page limits, and letters of support are required for all award categories. Look at the award specific instructions. What I would suggest is get strong letters of support from your mentors, your co-investigators, and the consultants who are listed on the project. Do not get any extraneous letters. They will not be evaluated. So get letters, strong letters from your study team members. With regards to the appendix, there is no page limits to it. If you are doing a study that requires like an IRB approval for conducting human subject research, then you would want to describe the status of it. And if it is approved, then include a notice or letter from your Human Subjects Protection Office about the IRB approval. And similarly for animal research too. You're also allowed to submit, it's not required, but if you want to have like 3 of your publications, up to 3 publications that are closely related to the project proposal, you are able to submit those materials too. But these publications have to be directly relevant to the application. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions. Okay, I can look in the chat box and see what questions. Okay, can we request support for salary for collaborators or co-investigators in our research? Correct me if I am wrong, Jackie, but we cannot provide salary support for those that are listed as co-investigators on your proposal.
I believe you're right. There's nothing like that, Cheryl, right?
Yeah.
I only think it's
Yeah.
mean.
So said,
yeah.
So said, just I think we provide salary support for the OFDFAs.
Yeah,
we do not provide, and for the PFAs, we provide salary support. But I don't think there is any faculty salary support on a BRA. There is none on a RAA. So on a BRA, you can hire like a lab tech or a support, but you can't pay faculty. The idea is not here. The faculty support is built into the OFDFA in your initial years. And is that correct, Jackie and Cheryl?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there is another question on percentage effort on the project. So I believe this is the fraction of the individual's time spent on this project.
And what proposal is it relating to? Because the answer is going to be different for,
I would be applying for the RAA.
yes. So the question is,
If, like my mentors, their percent effort that would be put on the project, is it, if they spend 5% of their working time on this project versus are they doing responsible for 10% of the project design or something like that? That is, imagine they're 60% of the time in clinic and 40% research. And this is some subset of their 40% research working hours in a week.
yeah. Seth, do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
And
So, Dr. Huja, like my understanding is this is the percentage effort of the like your mentor that he or she spends on this project per week. Like for example, if I spend like 10 hours on this project, my work week is 40 hours. That means I'm spending like 25% of my time on this.
Okay.
So my percentage effort that I would list would be 25%.
Very good. Thank you.
Jackson, if I can add, what the AOF and Park is looking is, so just to, I'm going to give you an example. If the effort from your mentor is 1%, and if the Park feels that you don't have enough support from your mentor, that would be the problem. And vice versa. We know that your mentor cannot spend 20% of their time. They have many other responsibilities. You know, on a $6,000 grant, if they're spending 20% of their time, that's also not viable because it will not cover their salary. So the percent effort for a collaborator or a mentor is just to show that the institution is making a commitment to support you, and the mentor is making a commitment to support you, and they commit to a certain amount of time. And it just alerts them of the thought process that if Jackson is applying for a grant, then I'm going to need to be able to support them. Now, if they're your master's mentor, they anyhow are going to spend some time in mentoring you for your thesis project. So that proportionate time would be really what you're looking at. Does that answer your question, Jackson?
Yes, very well. Thank you very much.
Dr. Alleretti, we had another question a little earlier on that is asking, is there a budget template for each award?
Yeah, so what we want is like an itemized line item for each item that they want to budget, and they can take up to 2 pages. There is no specific template per se, but then there is also 1 page where you have to tell about whether it is for travel, whether it is for salary, or if it is for actual conduct of experiments, obtaining equipment, etc. So there is a 1-page template, and then there is a 2-page budget justification document that you can upload to support all the items that you list for the budget.
There's some templated parts in the application that you have to fill, but there isn't really a specific budget. I would say that, people who use like a NIH type of budget, would be a good one. But you have to not only list the budget, but you have to justify why you say that this personnel is required. So the budget, as Seth mentioned, that you have to justify it too.
Looks like there is another question about salary in the center award category. Again, my understanding is if you can budget for non-student salary support, but it has to be commensurate with the effort that they actually are putting. And you cannot actually take a salary support for investigators or co-investigators on the center award. But if it is going to be for somebody that is not listed as investigators, then you could budget for their salary. Am I correct, Jackie?
I want to make sure salary is such a hot topic. Cheryl, does that sound right to you too? I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, Jackie, what was the question again?
And I'm double checking with Cheryl before I confirm.
I think what Dr. already said is correct. You're talking about the center award, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
And I would say just go to the application packet. And, you're asking us some questions, but I would go back. The final answer should come from the application packet. So please look at the application packet online, and it will tell you whether you can apply for salaries or not in a certain category.
Okay, I guess in the interest of time, we can move forward to the next slide. Okay, so these are some of the specific of for each of the awards. So first is for the OFDFA and the PFA awards. For the OFDFA award, there is a limit for up to 6 pages for your project proposal. And for the postdoctoral fellowship award, this limit is to 10 pages. And for each of this, you need to have like an educational plan, a clinical skills development plan, a teaching skills plan, and a research plan. So for when you write about the educational plan, right, you can use up to 1 page for the OFDFA as well as for the PFA awards. Describe any kind of educational program in which you will engage over the award period. And this should include a list of specific courses and seminars to be taken, and provide details on how this is actually going to enhance your career as an academic orthodontist. So do not provide just the list of courses, but you also have to provide what kind of skill sets that you're going to acquire by taking these courses, which would be helpful for your career, for academic career. And your clinical skills plan could also be up to 1 page. Describe the plan for development with regards to clinical skills and patient care. This plan could include, for example, courseworks which are specific to clinical competencies, completion of board certification, etc. And then your teaching skills plan can be up to 1 page for both the OFDFA and the PFA awards. Describe the plan for development of teaching abilities, and this plan should include a description of any kind of formal teaching, coursework, or mentorship, peer review activities, or participation in workshops. And then finally, your research plan. This can be up to 3 pages for your OFDFA award. For a PFA, it is a little bit more research intensive, so you could go up to 7 pages. Describe any planned or ongoing research projects, and if research is a significant component of your development plan, specifically for the OFDFA, then have a project that is hypothesis driven or hypothesis generating, and you'll have sections that will include the background, specific aims, preliminary results, the experimental design and the methods, how you're going to analyze the data, and then potential pitfalls and how you're going to address those challenges. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, Mindy, can we advance? Oh, okay, yeah, got it, yeah. So with regards to the letters of support, there are no page limits for this, but we need to have at least 3 letters of supports for the OFDFA or the PFA awards. Make sure, again, like you choose references that can provide or describe your abilities for evolving as a faculty member. And then also who's able to clearly articulate about your career goals and objectives and how this award is going to be helpful to further your career. And you would want to get letters of support from the individuals named on your title page. And this will include the principal advisor or the mentor, co-investigators, and consultants. And we need to get a letter of support from your institutional official to mention that you have the resources and support for your developmental plans. And you need to get a letter of support from your department chair or head of department to verify your eligibility to apply for this award, and also to mention that you have sufficient support in terms of resources and time for you to successfully conduct the proposed study. And if you're obviously, we're going to be a full-time faculty, right? You need to have like a a letter which confirms your appointment as a full-time faculty. For the as I mentioned earlier, for the project plans, again, you need to have like clear areas of emphasis. For the OFTFA, you can have one or more areas of emphasis, whereas for the PFA, your research must be your focus, but you do need to have like plans for the other three components also. Provide sufficient details for evaluation, and you can have multiple advisors on a project, and for each development plan, you could have like a key advisor that is able to provide you the guidance over the course of this project. So as Dr. Huja mentioned earlier, for each program, there is only one postdoctoral fellowship award that is allowable for each year. And as a PI, you could apply for both the OFTFA and the PFA, but only one of them is going to get funded. And if you're a current resident and who's going to graduate just before the start of the project period, then you can apply for the OFTFA or the PFA awards as appropriate. But you need to have a letter of verification from your department chair stating that from July 1st of the funding year, you're going to have a full-time faculty position. As mentioned earlier, this stipend or cash gift, or you could call it as a salary support or a salary supplement, this is allowed by AAOF only for the OFTFA and the PFA awards. And again, check with your institutional officials if they will allow for a salary supplement. To my knowledge, almost every school will allow for a salary support. They'll be happy to have AAOF pick up part of your salary, but not many institutions allow for a salary supplement. So you got to check with that. And we need to have letter of agreements for the institution as well as for the principal investigator. For the biomedical research award, we have a 10-page limit, and for the research aid awards, we have a 5-page limit. So for these award categories, the project plan should include the background and significance of conducting this research. And then if you have data from your preliminary studies, please feel free to add to your proposal. And then very granularly describe your experimental design, the methods, and also the statistical analysis. Moving forward, I think from this year, there is a separate section for your sample size or your power analysis. A lot of times, the statistical analysis section is very like scarce, or it does not provide sufficient details about the actual analytical approach that is being used in the context of the primary study hypothesis. So when you write your statistical section, provide as much details as possible about the different tests of associations that you're going to do in the context of your primary outcome variables and the study hypothesis in a question. And then you would also want to summarize what your expected outcomes would be. And if the outcomes are not as expected, how are you going to troubleshoot, and what are the alternative approaches for doing this study? For the Biomedical Research Award and the Research Aid Awards, again, there is no page limits with regards to the letters of supports, but have letters of support from all your co-investigators, consultants, and then have institutional letter of support, again, to document that you have the support system and also the resources available for conducting your study. And for the Biomedical Research Award, you would want to get a letter of support or from your department chair mentioning that you qualified to apply for the Biomedical Research Award. Again, just to reiterate about the Biomedical Research Award, this is for full-time faculty with 3 or more years of experience as of the funding, as of July 1st of the funding period. For a Research Aid Award, this is specifically for residents who evince a strong interest in furthering like an academic career, either full-time or part-time. And then you want to make sure that you have sufficient time while you're a resident to complete this program. So the amount of the duration of the residency program should be at least 1 year from the project funding period start date to complete your project. And these research aid awards are also can be applied for by part-time faculty members. So for the biomedical research award, you could also have the investigator initiated research, and this could be orthodontics and related topics. The hope is it will lead to publications and provide the investigators with preliminary data, which would lead to a larger grant from NIH or NSF or whatever federal sources. Again, here we emphasize on the scientific merit, the robustness of the project. There are no limits to the number of proposals an orthodontic program can apply for each year. A principal investigator may apply for both a biomedical research award and a postdoctoral fellowship award if they are eligible to apply for it, but only one of them will be funded. But then just keep in mind that you cannot apply as a PI or a co-PI on more than one application from the same category. For the center award, there are 4 types of center awards. So type 1 is for establishing a center of investigation. This is typically like seed funds or funds to acquire a specialized equipment to create a center of investigation. And then type 2 is where you have like an established center of investigation, and then you're going to the next stage where it is to actually do research. Then that's for it. Then you can apply for a type 2 kind of grant. And type 3 grant is to help support the establishment, maintenance, and development of special collections of materials and databases pertinent to orthodontics. And type 4 grant is more of a collaborative interinstitutional exercise, such as having like a symposium or workshops to expedite discoveries and technology transfer. And you can have up to 10 pages for the center award. And what content actually goes into each of into the proposal depends upon the type of award that you're applying to, whether type 1, type 2, type 3, or type 4. And you have to demonstrate a genuine cooperative or collaborative undertaking. This is sort of analogous to like the EU grants or the cooperative agreement plans of the NIH. And this should not be like an expansion of a biomedical research award. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, I think Dr. Frazier-Bowers is going to take over at this point of our time.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everyone, I don't see any questions in the chat. Everyone is still with us. Some of what I will talk about, I'm Sylvia Frazier-Bowers. I'm one of the park members and a past awardee of some of the AAOF's mechanisms. Some of what I'm going to talk about are things that will overlap some of what you've heard. I'll try to be mindful of that, but I guess sometimes a little redundancy might help. I'm going to talk about the review process and criteria. And with that, I'm basically going to focus on kind of the how and the what. And, you know, I'll start out by saying that, and it's already been asked in the chat, when will people be able to start applying? It will be in the beginning of July. And that may vary from year to year, depending on when the early or first part of July happens, if it's on a weekend or not. In some cases, it may be a little bit further in the month, but it's always in the early part of July. But just to sort of allay your concerns, hopefully many of you are at institutions where your department chair or program director will make you aware of it, because they will receive an email when the application cycle opens. And if we look, for instance, at the slide in front of us, relative to the application, which you've heard about all the components. So hopefully now in our sort of mental space, we can think about all these components and now what, how, and what do we do? this somewhat bi-directional flow chart talks about how the applicant on behalf and as a part of an institution will make an application for funding and for their proposed activities that goes to the AAOF Senior Vice President and staff. And I can't remember if Miss Jackie Bodie introduced herself this way. I think she did. But she is the Senior Vice President of the AAOF, and staff members on this call will be specifically introduced or made their roles described at the end. So that's where the application goes. And without getting into the bidirectionality of this flow chart, the staff, as well as the Senior Vice President, makes that information available to the AAOF Planning and Awards Committee. And you often will hear us say PARC. So the PARC committee will receive those. And just as sort of an aside, the process originally for applying was a hard copy thing that was turned in. We now use something called Foundant, and someone already put the link into the chat, but we now use something called Foundant. And because of that, and for other reasons, that was in 2021, we moved the deadline from mid-November to mid-October to facilitate processing and using that system. And so once you turn that in, the Planning and Awards Committee, which consists of 9 members, will all have access through this portal to applications that will be assigned by the chair of the PARC committee to individuals. And I'll talk a little bit more about that next, but before we move, this panel is going to review and score the application, and they're going to recommend a subset of those for funding or not. The AAOF Board of Directors is the part of this entire cycle that actually makes the final decision on all of the awards, even though PARC makes very, strong recommendations based on the evidence and rubric that we use. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the Board of Directors actually has the authority to act on the recommendations one way or another. And then it goes back to, here's the bidirectionality, to the staff that will manage the administrative aspects of those that were funded. And if it turns out that you weren't funded and you have questions, that's also the group that you would ask. And then the money gets to the individuals that were awarded, and they have to agree to the terms. And I'm not going to talk a lot about terms, but there are specific things that are requirements, and the expectation is that those are upheld. And then they perform the proposed activities with a timeline that they provided themselves. And if they don't, if they don't find that that timeline is adequate, then they may ask for a no-cost extension. But all of these things are, it's necessary that all of these things are managed in a way that upholds their contract and responsibility with us. Next slide. So again, a little more specifically on the flow, the how, and the what. Once the AAOF award materials are issued in early July of every year, those applications are received. And this is the part where especially Dr. Alaretti said a lot about components, and he mentioned a lot of things like, oh, this doesn't have page limits, but this other thing does have page limits. So you have to be at this stage very careful with your instructions, critical to avoid potentially being triaged. For instance, if your award was one that said the limit is 6 pages and you made it 12, then that is that is cause for being ineligible or triage. Obviously meeting the deadline, which we know is in October. I believe that was already stated by Dr. Huja. I think it's October 13th. Meeting the deadline is important. And you can, in this time period, the reason why I'm reiterating the senior vice president and staff and their point of, or their positionality in the team as a contact point, this is an opportunity in this time period from July to October to ask questions to make sure you don't submit something that has kind of obviously violated some rule. And Dr. Huja put into the chat that you're encouraged to start working on your grant award even prior to July. And yes, the portal is just there to help you provide the information in a very organized fashion. It also delivers it to us in an organized fashion and allows a very nice repository for both before, during, and after if an award is funded. I think that's it here. So the park chair, and this is more of the what, just so I guess it's a little bit how, but just kind of what happens so that everyone is aware of this process and it feels transparent and fair. The park chair will assign members the applications that they will review, and it's nearly evenly distributed. But if there is a COI, which is a conflict of interest, we do want applicants to know that we're very thoughtful about that. We're not going to assign something where there is a conflict of interest, meaning you're at the same institution or you're a collaborator that publishes within the last few years with the applicant. There is also a place on the application where you can say, if you believe there's some conflict of interest, one that may not have been disclosed by the the park review committee, but we're also very diligent about noting our own conflicts of interest. And once that's assigned, you will have 2 independent people review your application. They will score it. And the scores range from, I guess I will note, a little bit opposite of maybe the NIH system, where you get a score on a scale of 9 to 1, with 9 being the best and 1 not being the best. And if we have individual scorers, again, they're doing this independently, that their scores on any given application are more than 2 points apart, there will be a third reviewer. Again, this is all favoring a system where the applicant has the best opportunity to be funded. I'll go ahead and look at the question now as I go, because my part is a little bit shorter. And so someone said, do we need to submit a revision note file answering? And yes, that is true. And Dr. Already has already answered that question. That, as far as I know, is not a part of your page limit. And so you can spend, it's important that you spend very thoughtful time doing that. So more about the conflict of interest. How does that work? If you have a conflict of interest, you have not only no part in reviewing that, but you have no part in being a part of the discussion. So you would leave the room and would never, it would never be made, you would never be made aware of what those scores were. And so once the body convenes, those reviewers who reviewed will present their review. They will be discussed, and then there will be a vote, and all of the scores will be provided with confidential ballots, and even more detail than I think maybe what you need. If you're voting outside of the range of an assigned reviewer, you have to state why. So again, this is all favoring that the process is fair and hopefully more likely to lead in being funded if there's merit to that application. Along the entire process, everything is anonymous so that you're not, again, introducing biases that would not favor success if merit exists. Park will, as I mentioned earlier, compose a report that makes recommendations to the board of directors, and that actually is something that if the board of directors wants to make a decision outside of what we advise, they could. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that they do strongly consider and most often receive our recommendations as what they would ultimately follow. The applicant will receive a funding decision either way. Someone already mentioned, I believe it was Dr. Alleretti, that you will receive a critique. I remember being a part of Park ad hoc when that came into practice, that the critiques are now very structured. So you have a comment on what was the overall significance. What were the strengths of the principal investigator? What was the strengths of or weaknesses of the methods? What about innovation? There's a section that's going to look specifically to see if you had innovation as a strong point or not at all. So that's meant, first of all, it's meant to be somewhat transparent to you if you've already received a critique, so that you know how to address each of those attributes, which are expected to be a part of your application's quality. Next slide. And I think I've already touched on this. I didn't mean to do it in advance. But again, the scale is 9, with that being the best and 1 being the worst. It's probably safe to assume that if you have something less than a 5 or a 4, the chances of funding go down quite a bit. I don't want to comment specifically on that, but if you look at your scoring criteria, which is, we won't go to it now, but we'll go to it in a second, it actually explains what the scores, the numbers mean. And if you have below a 5, it literally means it's not good. And so typically we don't tend to fund things that are below a 5. But the criteria that make up what ultimately becomes the score, as I mentioned before, is how significant is this proposal? We, we don't want to place ourselves into sort of a box, but if there is relevance to specifically to orthodontics and especially clinical orthodontics, that helps. But that is not to say that those proposals that are more basic or scientific would not be competitive. If the investigator, and when we talk about investigator, we're talking about the investigator's academic pedigree. How much training do they have? Where did they train? What were the things that they did to develop themselves? Were they mentored at some point, depending on if it's like a BRA versus an OFDFA? We know that for those awards that are for the less than 5 years, we don't expect that the investigator will have significant experience, mentored or otherwise. But for all people who are applying, we hope that they can capture the quality of being innovative, extremely important. We also expect that the approach is sound, meaning it is evidence-based. You're coming up with an approach to whatever the methodology is that has been proven to be significant and adequate for whatever your study is. You certainly don't want an approach to propose an approach that overlooks the literature that has said this particular thing is flawed, and there's evidence-based research that shows that that approach is flawed. So you want to make sure that you're careful in how you propose methodology, because the board or the park committee is made up of a lot of different experts in one way or another. If you're in an environment that is rich in resources and in success, that is definitely a benefit. But sometimes when we say resource, people don't realize resource could be the fact that your particular department chair or mentor, who may not be your chair, is providing you with the support. They're actually providing you with their time. They're actually making sure that you're enrolled in whatever developmental activities you need to be in. So it doesn't necessarily always mean that, you know, you have a state-of-the-art top-tier institution rated by NIH or someone, but it does mean that, and it could mean that, but it also means that you have the appropriate support from all of the aspects that would lead to your success. And if we look at anything that you've previously had funded, so everyone doesn't have this. Again, if you're in the newer stage, you wouldn't have previous funding. Even if the previous funding is not AAOF funding, if we look and see you had a small grant from some other entity, the Ectodermal Dysplasia Foundation, and we saw that you also, per the title of that funded project, published 2 papers on that. That's what we're looking at. And clearly, if you've had AAOF funding, we do want to know, were you able to present that? Did you publish it? So that's important. And when we look at your strengths and weaknesses, again, we're looking to see if they're major weaknesses or minor weaknesses. So before we go to the next slide, I will say that these other criteria, having your budget appropriate and justified, these are the types of things that can reduce enthusiasm of an application if these are not clear. So sometimes you followed all of the instructions, but you haven't made it clear and maybe adequately explained. Next slide. So again, I mentioned that we have a scale. And you can see 5 is smack dab in the middle, and it means that this is a good application, but there's at least one moderate weakness. A 6, which is more ideal, says that this is strong and there are only minor weaknesses. So, you know, again, it's less likely that anything less than a 5 would be funded. In some cases, maybe less than a 6 might not be funded either, but that decision is made in that particular discussion. Individuals who have a 4, 3, 2, or 1 actually would benefit a lot from having all of those discussion points shared with them in the critique. So it gives you an opportunity, as was mentioned earlier, to revise and resubmit. And oftentimes those individuals are successful. And clearly, if you have a 7, 8, or 9, that's very, very good. But again, look at the reasons why you would not have that score, with understanding from your mentorship what constitutes a minor weakness versus a moderate weakness. If something that you proposed is, if it's not really reasonable, if it's maybe even not scientifically likely or possible, then that's going to be a major weakness. So be very careful to be in consultation with the mentors and senior faculty in your area to make sure that you don't have any major weaknesses. Maybe one moderate weakness would not would not hurt the application as much. So with that, I can entertain questions. I don't see any. I think you guys have been good about asking any questions. Okay. So this is a question that really speaks to anyone on this call. If a junior faculty who logically fits with the OFDFA has a project that involves engineers, could you apply? I guess you're asking, Dr. Capello, can you apply for both? Is that what you're asking? Both at the same time? Yes. So you can't get both. I know that. But here's the benefit. When you're a junior faculty and you're in the under 5 years, that's really the only time you can get an OFDFA. Our sort of logical thinking, which may not, you may have a more compelling reason to do something different, but usually we kind of logically say, take advantage of that less than 5 years and get the OFDFA, because it's now up to $30,000. And, once you hit year 4, you only have 1 more year to even get that. Does anyone else from Park or AAOF?
Yeah, I could add, Sylvia. I think the purpose of the OFDFA and the Center Award are very different. So I think you should ask yourself the question, what am I trying to do? And, how well do I fit the categories? And the budgets are also very different. Just because the project involves engineers and they are external to the dental school, maybe, doesn't make it a center award. And the center awards are very competitive too, because the money that is attached to it is relatively high. So, you could talk to Jackie, Ms. Bodie, who's a senior vice president, about the various categories, but I think you should ask yourself what exactly you're trying to do beyond just involving engineers, or any, if you're involving microbiologists or architects or whatever it might be. So that's my thought.
I think that's a very good point. And, again, the timing such that I don't know how long you're going to be a junior faculty, but it would be really good to consider if the OFDFA allows you, as Dr. Huja said, do what it is that you're aiming to do. Someone is graduating at the end of September as a resident. You can apply for the RAA if you're going to be a part-time faculty. I don't know if you're graduating as a resident and then you're going to be a part-time faculty, because that's one of the categories. Does anyone else want to comment on that? Or I don't know if you are going to, if you're graduating and you're leaving for private practice with no part-time faculty position, I don't believe that would make you eligible. Am I correct, Jackie and or Cheryl? Okay, yeah.
And Sylvia, if I might add at this point, I really think for all of the people who are on this call, we are telling you and guiding you on how to apply, but you must review the application guidelines that are online. I don't think that this workshop is the only material that you should use to apply. Look at the guidelines for the application. They are spelled out in great detail and will answer most of your questions. This is just to help you understand what you're going to read in that application guidelines a little bit better and make you more familiar with the terms and the different types of grants that you're going to use, especially if you're new to this process. So if you are applying for a center award, please focus on the general application guidelines and then this guidelines specifically for the center award and see whether you have met them. Because we may not be covering everything that is there in that AOF application guidelines.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. And as I said, as a part of the review process, if you have somehow not followed the instructions, certainly unwittingly, but if you haven't, that's cause for it to either be completely triaged or to score very low. So be careful with that. And so I think we can keep moving.
And I will take over. Thank you very much. Doctors Huja, Fraser Bowers, and Al already did a great job detailing and outlining what's important for each one of these. And now I'm going to talk about how you can be successful with your role in selecting the proper mentors and knowing what the chair's wants will also be. So some of the pitfalls are not looking at how strong each of the categories are for your criteria. So quality of your application is critical. Are you proposing novel ideas and approaches? And does your application test a hypothesis? So make sure that you look these over and those are included. Your formatting and the completeness of the application is also very important. Obviously, you want to submit by the deadline. And like the other doctor said, follow the instructions diligently, particularly for your category. And make sure that you include all of the required materials. As also was mentioned, if you're reworking a previous non-AAOF application, it may need to be reformatted to the AAOF guidelines. The categories that you select, make sure that you're eligible for, and also make sure that you're very competitive for that specific category. And that's one of the reasons why they were going over the differences between the Center Award and the PFA. It is important also, as discussed before, to discuss what you have achieved previously and what you've received from prior funding. Also, if you have gotten another AAOF award, make sure that you were filing your reports on time so that if you're applying for a new one, you'll be looked at in much better light. Your mentors and your consultants are very important. They are important for you to have strong, relevant mentors to give you input often and right at the very beginning. Make sure that they review your application before you submit it and that they give you the input to make sure that you're writing it correctly and that you've compiled the information that's necessary. Also, they will help you make your research questions strong as well as current. Some guidelines are for you to start 6 months prior to submission. And award materials are typically posted by July 1st. You've seen this website on many of the slides, so you can get more information, aaofoundation.net. Your research, define excellent and novel. Your questions are very important, the experimental design methodologies. And provide any preliminary data if you have it already that would be supporting your ideas. There was a comment, and I guess there's some questions here. Is it uncommon for this to be the thing? And Dr. Huja said most residents applying for RIA that it's most likely the first application for research funding. Although I know our residents at UTHFC, many of them have applied for funding through their institution or the alumni, and then interested in faculty positions or their junior faculty, they'll apply for the RIAs. And if you're wanting to go into teaching, which is what we're hoping that the people who are applying for this are interested in faculty positions, try to seek out new approaches for designing curriculum and teaching methods. And there are a number of courses that your university can offer, along with IDEA and AAO, so that you can take relevant courses, workshops, and classes. Although, well, I'll tell you later about one of them that isn't offered. Again, back to your mentorship. It is critical to have strong, supported, and dedicated mentorship in your research, teaching, and career development. Like was discussed before, they will help you to know what your next steps are and help guide you along the way so you can avoid more pitfalls. Application refinements. Present and discuss your proposals with your mentors and your consultants frequently. Don't give them everything all at once when you're all done, because they may want it totally revised. So if you do it from the very beginning, they can read and revise as you're going along, and you'll have a much stronger presentation. Have you done all of your own work? So look to make sure that you're very organized with your proposal, that you've paid attention to detail, and your reviewers for PARC are incredible. Please make it easy for them to find the needed information and put the content where they would want to see it and where it should be. So these are the award types that will be given in 2024. For junior faculty, it's the OFDFA, or the Orthodontic Faculty Development Fellowship Award, and the PFA, Postdoctoral Fellowship Award. And then the BRA is the Biomedical Research Award, and that's for people who are at least 3 years or more with full-time academics. The other two are the Center Award and the Research Aid Award, or the RAA. The one award, what I said was, I'd tell you which award wouldn't be offered, is the Education Innovation Award for 2024, but you may see that in the future if you're interested. AAOF wants to build our future to be strong, and we will be improving the quality of our applications. We want to have discoveries in orthodontics, help develop faculty for successful outcomes, and develop new processes for identifying calls for proposals. We're also constantly enhancing the quality in review and feedback. We are working on a new strategic plan, and we want to implement our AAOF strategic plan to make us stronger for the future. Some of the things AAOF are looking for are novel research and developmental projects. And we have noticed that this has been slow over the past years, but now we're having an increase in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So machine learning is on the rise, and we would like that explored. Instruments, or with the aid of machine learning, instruments can report on intraoral conditions like perio, soft tissue compliance and behavior, appliance malfunctions, in addition to somatic growth status, and comparing what we saw initially to coordinate with our planned treatment mechanics. And then AI can work together with the ML. AI facilitated planning for qualitative treatment mechanics with 3D is very possible, while the machine learning qualitatively will assess the conditions that our patients present. And we can incorporate that in the design for a mechanotherapy. This could be very instrumental for doing future marketing, which can be based on the demographics with the patient's personas, preference for behavior services, as well as aesthetics. So now, any big questions, especially when this is done, go to the AAOfoundation.net, know the ins and outs of the category that you're going to be applying for. And these are the special people that you will be talking to: Jackie Bodie, George Reinerman, and Mindy Cobb. Any questions? I see a couple of chats. It says, in case of OFDFA, do you encourage that the mentor must be affiliated in the department that I'm affiliated, an outside mentor, and is that a deal breaker? I will let one of the park members answer that.
I can try to answer it, Bonda. I think you can have multiple mentors. Typically, if you mentioned that, let's say if it's an engineering project, you might have a mentor in engineering, like let's just say the chairman of mechanical engineering, but you could also have your department chair could be your mentor, your program director could be your mentor, or a senior faculty in your department could be a mentor. It doesn't have to be affiliated with your department. It has to be directly related to what your project is about. But in a OFDFA, somebody's going to be mentoring your career, and it's most likely going to be an orthodontic faculty, maybe your chair. But if you have proposed a research plan, that research mentor may be outside the department, if the project is such that it relies on expertise from outside. So I don't know if that helps you, or if someone would like to add to that.
I agree with the comments made by Dr. Huja. I have seen some in the past have sort of a mentoring team, where they may have a primary mentor who isn't at their institution, but they have someone who is also serving in that role, whether in title or not, who's at their institution.
Are there any other questions that need to be posted in the chat before we wrap up today? If not, I believe you all have our contact information as staff, so please feel free to reach out after this is over, and obviously anytime after we wrap up today, in case you have other questions, especially after the application is posted and live, you might think of other things, so please feel free to connect with us and ask any questions that you might have. So thank you very much again for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and please keep an eye out for this recording to be available on our website if you would like to reference it later as well. So thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, AAOF staff. Thank you, Jackie, Cheryl, everyone, Mindy, and everyone, George.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you all, and
Have a great-
all the very best with your applications. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.